I want to make a couple of comments. Before we get to Melissa, or even before we got to Beryl, it's important to remind the country that for the last 2 fiscal years, government's revenues have been struggling to meet government expenditures.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was not a quiet budget discussion. This was a direct economic face-off inside Parliament. On one side, Finance Minister Fayval Williams defending the government's fiscal discipline, saying Jamaica had the longest stretch of no new taxes in independent history, and that only a Category 5 hurricane could have interrupted that stability. On the other side, opposition MP Julian Robinson pushing back hard, arguing that for 2 years, revenues have struggled to meet expenditures, and that major airport revenue sales were what truly balanced the books. So the real question is Jamaica financially strong or surviving on one-off transactions? Let's break it down.
Madam Speaker, this government has had the longest number of years of no new taxes in the history of independent Jamaica. Madam Speaker, only a Category 5 hurricane with winds of 185 miles per hour could have interrupted that. Madam Speaker, our adherence to fiscal prudence, putting aside some of our budget for a rainy day, finding financial instruments that would provide ready cash in the event our rainy day buffer was not enough, were some of the wise decisions we made as a government. And oh, how those wise decisions have helped us to quickly respond to bring relief to many left homeless by Hurricane Melissa.
Responding, the member from Southeast.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
St. Andrew Southeast.
St. Andrew Southeast. And we are offering our preliminary comments, having just received this, and the opposition will more fulsomely respond as we go along. I want to make a couple of comments. Before we get to Melissa, or even before we got to Beryl, it's important to remind the country that for the last 2 fiscal years, government's revenues have been struggling to meet government expenditures. And the government has relied for the last 2 fiscal years on 2 one-off transactions which have allowed the government to fund the budget. In 2023-24, the sale of 12 years of future revenues from the Norman Manley International Airport yielded $75 billion, which financed the 23-24 budget. For the 24-25 budget, the sale of future revenues, 10 years of future revenues of Donald Sangster Airport yielded $61 billion, which allowed the government to finance the 24-25 budget. I am making this point, Madam Speaker, to indicate that without Beryl, without Melissa, the government would have had to find some other asset to sell to meet the demands of the budget. All right? I want to go to some of the measures, again, preliminary to what the minister has proposed. In relation to the special consumption tax on non-alcoholic sweetened drinks, I know there is a public health imperative, a very big one. But I will say to you, I do not believe the price increases will change behavior. Hold on. And hold on. And the persons who are the greatest consumers are young children who go to basic school, primary school. And we need to change the culture. But when you look at the demand for these goods and the level of the increases, I would posit that it's a relatively inelastic demand, meaning that I don't believe that you're going to have much behavior change. Yeah. What I am recommending, though, is that the 10 billion which you, and by your own measure, the fact that you anticipate to collect so much from this indicates that you don't really expect there to be a significant fall off in demand. Correct. But I would recommend that some of the monies that are collected from it, are invested and provided to the local agriculture industry so that natural juices, unsweetened natural juices, can be provided as alternatives to the sweetened drinks. And that the monies, the 10 billion, are not solely just put in the overall consolidated fund, but that we enhance our ability to provide the substitutes for it. Secondly, in relation to the environmental protection levy, again, my recommendation, the funds that we anticipate to collect from this goes into building greater resilience so that we can absorb some of those shocks that we naturally are going to have in the future, right? And when you look at you anticipate raising 3.6 billion from it. And we know that given the nature of climate change, we are likely to have future events that some of those resources be put to build resilience, whether it be in infrastructure, river training, other things. Madam Speaker, I am also happy that the government finally has not just followed the recommendation of the Fiscal Commissioner, but abided with the FAA Act in ensuring that the revenue measures are tabled at the same time as the estimates of expenditure. I will close here, and as I indicated, these are our preliminary comments, and once we have an opportunity, the budget debate and others, we will expand on it. Thank you.
Minister, just please move the motion for the notice to be approved, which you gave earlier.
Wait, come now? I don't know whether I did it. Okay. Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion, notice of which I gave earlier, be approved.
The question is that the motion, notice of which the minister gave earlier, be approved. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today, but let me make two quick announcements. Standing Finance Committee will meet on the 5th and 6th of March. We intend to start at 9:15 on the 5th of March, and again, we ask the members 9:15. On the 5th of March, as you know, we have a lot of ground to cover over the 2 days, and we ask the members to be here and be on time. Additionally, the Parliament is organizing with the Ministry of Finance for there to be a training session in relation to budgetary matters, right? So that especially the new members of Parliament will be able to go through and interrogate the budget and get themselves familiar with the budget and the budgetary process. We think this will make the Standing Finance Committee go a lot smoother. So members, look out for that notification as to when this training will be held, and please avail yourself. With that said, we ask that the meeting be adjourned for a date to be set.
The Finance Minister's central argument is clear. The government practiced fiscal discipline. They built rainy day buffers. They adhered to fiscal rules. Disaster struck Hurricane Melissa. Because of wise decisions, they were able to respond quickly. That's a strong narrative. She is essentially saying, we managed responsibly. And when crisis came, we were prepared. Politically, that resonates. Technically, it sounds solid. But then, Julian Robinson, the revenues were already struggling. This is where the debate shifts. Robinson reminds Parliament that for 2 fiscal years, government revenues struggled to meet expenditures. The budget relied on one-off asset transactions. He highlights sale of 12 years of future revenue from Norman Manley's International Airport, $75 billion. Sale of 10 years of future revenue from Sangster Airport, $61 billion. And here is the punchline of his argument. Without Hurricane Melissa, the government would still have needed another asset to sell. That's not a small change. He is basically asking, are we managing growth or selling tomorrow's income to pay today's bills? That's a serious fiscal sustainability question. Now we get to policy. The government processes increasing the special consumption tax on non-alcoholic sweetened drinks. Public health justifications, absolutely. But Robinson says he doesn't believe price increases will significantly change behavior. He calls demand relatively inelastic, meaning people may keep buying even if prices rise. And he makes an interesting economic observation. If the government expects to collect $10 billion from it, that suggests they don't expect demand to drop much. That's sharp. But he doesn't just criticize, he proposes. Use some of the revenue to support local agriculture. Invest in natural and sweetened juice alternatives. Don't just dump the money into the consolidated fund. That's constructive opposition. Then we move to the Environmental Protection Levy, expected to raise $3.6 billion. Robinson suggests, don't just collect it. Use it to build resilience, infrastructure upgrade, river training, climate shock absorption. Given how often Jamaica faces storms, that's a real long-term strategy discussion. This wasn't noise, this was policy depth. This debate exposes 2 competing narratives: government, fiscal prudence, strong management, disaster response success. Opposition, structural revenue gaps, masked by asset sales. And honestly, both sides raised valid points. The key question becomes, is asset monetization strategic financial engineering, or is it temporary relief? That's the heart of the debate. One thing is clear. This budget debate was not surface level politics. It was finance minister versus shadow finance thinking. It was numbers versus sustainability. Short-term liquidity versus long-term strength. And as climate shock become more frequent, fiscal decisions like this will matter even more. So I want to hear from you. Do you believe the government is managing responsibly? Or do you think the opposition has exposed a deeper issue? Drop your thoughts below. Like, share and subscribe for more real breakdowns of what's happening inside Parliament. without the noise, just the facts and analysis. See you in the next one.